Many walkers can relate to some, if not all, the top 5 common problems. Pain is great at catching your attention, and at worst, stopping you from enjoying your activity. Many either don't know when to stop and get help, or they decide to power through their injuries with a hope and a prayer that it'll just go away. It's almost like denial for athletes. If you're lucky, an injury will be one and done. But that's not what this video is about. We're talking about injuries that often cause reoccurring problems. Reoccurring injuries are troublesome and frustrating. Just when you think you've beat the monster back, it rears its ugly head again. Frustrating! One of the reasons is because of something we are unaware of, a cycle that occurs with injury and pain. So, what causes reoccurring musculoskeletal injuries and pain? Ironically, it's called the cycle of pain and re-injury. There are 2 ways to enter the cycle. Both are types of injury. One, when normal forces are exerted on a weak joint, and 2, traumatic forces are exerted on a normal joint. So what does that mean? Well, let's talk about the first one. When normal forces are exerted on a weak joint. When you are doing normal things and still get injured, that means the body just is no longer able to handle even normal activity. It either never did or can't anymore. We see this in people who are increasingly sedentary in their lifestyle. Weakness from a sedentary lifestyle occurs when the gradual decline of the body's strength until what was once possible is not anymore. This is where the old saying comes in true. Use it or lose it. Another way normal forces can affect a weak joint is from overtraining. There is a normal amount of tissue damage that occurs from a normal walk. The healing process is how we get stronger. But if the level of activity does not allow enough time in between events to properly heal, then tissues just can't heal fast enough to keep up. Soon there's more injury occurring than healing, leading to less and less strong tissue and more weak and damaged tissue. At one point, what seems like an insignificant activity can become a source of injury. People who get these injuries say things like, I was just bending over to pick up my pencil, and boom, suddenly my back hurt and I felt something give. Since then, I've had pain and discomfort. Now, the other way that injury is caused is when traumatic forces occur on a normal joint, from things like a fall, a bump, trip, accident, or impact. Sometimes the traumatic event occurred many years ago and set the stage for joint dysfunction now. Whatever the reason, tissues are damaged and torn and bones misaligned or fractured. Once the injury occurs, it creates dysfunction. Dysfunction can range from poor articulating joints up to and including fractures. Dysfunction leads to tissue damage. Tissue damage initiates the healing process and swelling occurs, which leads to pain. Now, pain can be subtle, if any, to extreme and will reflect the amount of initial trauma, dysfunction, and swelling. How fast you move through this cycle is affected by how strong your body is and is reflected in the tissue strength levels, levels of fitness and healing, nutrition, age, genetics, body type, etc. No one likes pain, and in the next part of the cycle we deal with pain avoidance behaviors as we start to modify movement patterns to try and move without creating pain. Limping is an obvious and good example of this. More commonly, the modified movement is much less obvious. This leads to retraining of neurological patterns and we learn a new way of moving. This moves us along in the cycle because the body will lay scar tissue down trying to heal the joint. Scar tissue that is not properly rehabilitated is really quite weak. Without proper attention and rehabilitation to ensure optimal healing, the joint will heal in a weakened, compromised, and even atrophied manner. Much like if a broken bone is not properly set before the cast is placed, the bone will heal, but if it wasn't properly placed, then when the cast comes off, it can significantly affect function and functional capacity where arthritic changes can occur. The weakened but healed joint often lays in silence. While there is no longer a crisis, it is a compromised joint that is highly unstable, weak, and a weak link in the chain. A weakened and compromised joint is susceptible to injury, and with each injury and each spinning of the cycle, the problems get worse, occurs more often, and expresses higher levels of tissue damage, degenerative changes, and pain. People will not be consciously aware of the cycle or where they're in it, but they say things like, I have a bad back, bad knee, bad hip, bad foot. Fill in the blank. They are aware of the body's parts' repeated level of injury and weakness and lack confidence in their movements and activities. The thought that they'll just have to live with it is a common mistake in thinking. So, the moral of the story is this. Just because something doesn't hurt like it used to, or even not at all, does not necessarily mean that it has returned to a strong and healthy functioning tissue. Often it means that there is a significant scar tissues, adhesions, shifting of the musculoskeletal balance, altered function, and eventually arthritic degeneration. Being aware of the cycle of pain and how to avoid it in the first place is important. Obviously, this includes not getting injured in the first place. But if you're already in the cycle, knowing how to get out of it is even more important. This involves proper joint care through chiropractic examination and treatments, and reestablishing joint flexibility, range of motion, and strength. It also includes reestablishing lost neuromuscular control through effective rehabilitation. Those who properly rehabilitate an injured joint usually return to a fairly normal lifestyle and significantly reduce the chances of future problems.